What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Swish Insights. My name is Noah, and on this channel we analyze the most trending topics in the basketball business world through breakdowns and in-depth conversations. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest stories shaping the future of the league, NBA expansion. A concept that hasn't come to fruition over 20 years, but has become one of the most talked about topics in the basketball world this decade. We've seen the WNBA make strides recently with their announcement of 3 franchises in Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Detroit, bringing their total to 18 teams in the league by 2030. This rollout includes Cleveland starting in 2028, followed by Detroit in 2029, and Philadelphia in 2030, with each of these respective ownership groups paying $250 million in expansion fees. This follows the arrivals of the Golden State Valkyries starting this 2025 season, and Toronto and Portland in 2026. Whereas in the NBA, the last expansion was in 2004 with the addition of the Charlotte Bobcats, now known as the Hornets, and prior to that in 1995 with the inception of 2 Canadian teams, the Toronto Raptors and Vancouver Grizzlies. Now, one of the biggest dominoes for expansion is the media rights deal. Last summer in 2024, the NBA signed an 11-year media rights agreement with Disney, Amazon, and NBC worth a total of $76 billion kicking in for this upcoming 2025 to 2026 season. This replaced their former 9-year media rights agreement worth $24 billion with ESPN, ABC, and Turner Sports. The finances from these media rights deal funds a salary cap, pays on, and supports league operations. So without this, there's practically no predictable revenue in the NBA. Since these funds from the media rights deal are divided by 30 teams, if you add 2 more teams in the example of expansion, this totals to 32, reducing the overall pie. So, as a result, expansion teams pay a one-time fee to the league, and indirectly, these funds go towards the existing owners to compensate for their lost share. This expansion fees often depend on the average valuation per team across the league. Whereas for the CBA, this establishes a framework for financial aspects like revenue sharing and player contracts, which is important for determining salaries and calculating in the event of expansion. Lastly, before these fees can take place, the NBA also does a vetting process whether they believe the proposed fee is a good fit or not. This selection criteria is usually based on market size, fan engagement potential, and ownership group credibility. After approval of this, the team formation starts where they hire executives, GMs, coaches, and other front office positions. Now, of course, this is just a rough summary of expansion, as today I'll be bringing on Howard Beck, a journalist from The Ringer, to help us unpack this even more. Howard's covered for Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, and Los Angeles Times, covering Kobe Bryant during his early years with the Lakers. He published an article this past February on if the NBA expansion is a good idea or not, and I've left the link down below for those who are interested in taking a read. But without further ado, let's get right into this conversation. Just before we jump in, your thoughts on the season. Obviously, OKC won, free agency moves, the draft, summer league. What are your biggest takeaways? What are your overall thoughts of last year and free agency, all those things?
Man, it's funny because we're recording this. It's the last Sunday in July. Am I allowed to give away the timing on when we're recording this?
You're good. All good.
And it's only been a month since the finals, and I feel like that was 10 years ago already. I've already forgotten everything else that happened last season. Even free agency, it's wait, what? Because free agency, it felt ended on July 2nd. And since then, I've been to Vegas and back, and I was there for a full week because I was also teaching there in addition to doing some work stuff for The Ringer. And then I got back and I've been teaching a class here. So everything feels very distant right now. The Thunder Championship obviously was, the fun run and a really fun final. 7 games. We don't get that very often. It had been a long time. Just the mixed feelings of leaving the arena that night, of watching Halliburton go down, but then getting to watch this really awesome and very talented and very hardworking young Thunder team, be on that podium. It was, I think all in all it was a great NBA season. And I think it has been, for all of the hand wringing in some quarters about free agency and the second apron and all this stuff, the offseason's had its share of fireworks, including Kevin Durant being traded hours before Game 7. And then all the way through a gazillion other deals that have happened. We've seen less straight free agency movement, but plenty of trade movement. Rockets and Nuggets fortified themselves. So we have 2 legit challengers to the Thunder next season. I don't know that they're close enough, but they're close enough to make it interesting. We'll see. And so that's good. It sucks that everybody's already kind of settled into this. Well, it's just going to be kind of a screwy year in the East, and it's Knicks by default. We'll see if anybody else can get into that conversation. That's a bummer because obviously of Tatum's hamstring and Halliburton's hamstring, Buck's not doing enough to get back into the race. Everybody being very skeptical of this just because of health reasons. So I don't know. I mean, we also still have, by the way, 2 more months of offseason to go as you and I talk. And so a lot that could still happen. let's not forget the Karl Anthony Towns trade to New York happened on the eve of Media Day, so late September last year. Dwight Howard, once upon a time, was traded in the middle of August to the Lakers. Shit can happen at very late stages, so let's not close the books on the offseason yet, and on, people can run wild with all their over-under predictions and everything else. We've done even a little bit of that on our podcast, but there's still offseason to go. We still have all these restricted free agents who are kind of in a holding pattern, being held hostage kind of by the system itself. So let's see. But I think if I had to guess, between now and late September, when teams gather for media days and training camps, at least one other or two other things of note are going to happen.
I saw your article in The Ringer about NBA expansion, and this topic is interested me for a few months now. And the league is growing exponentially. There's 30 teams in the league, and the last was 20 years ago with the Hornets. They were the last team that were accepted into the league, 2004. So yeah, and I think with expansion, obviously, adding teams, whether it be like a rollout of 2 or 4, whatever they do. I think talent dilution is an important topic. And you mentioned the article as well. And like I mentioned, when I said the Bobcats were the last team that came into the league, they weren't a 500+ team until 5 years after entering. And the same thing happened to Toronto Raptors and Vancouver Grizzlies, I think, when they entered in 1996. So as a result of this, what do you think the NBA is going to execute to avoid this from happening again and maintaining that competitive landscape? Because I think the league is in a really good place competitively. And if you go into expansion, adding 2 teams, are they going to be terrible for X amount of years? So what do you think the NBA will try to do to avoid this from happening?
So it's interesting because, I mentioned Las Vegas Summer League. I was just there a couple weeks ago. Adam Silver had his annual post-Board of Governors meeting press conference. He does this every July. The owners meet, they discuss some things. Sometimes some new policies are enacted. Sometimes, they're voting on franchise sales, whatever. There wasn't any major news, but everybody, or a lot of people, went into that week thinking that, this is going to be the week. This is when the owners are going to finally set expansion into motion after years of speculation. And it wasn't going to happen because, they want to sign a new media rights deal. Well, the media rights deal is done. They wanted to wait until the CBA was done. The CBA is done. Everything's in place. This should be the moment, right? And everybody who I think has been, whether it's, ownership groups out there waiting to pounce, potential ownership groups, whether it's the cities that have been waiting to be the expansion contenders, Las Vegas, Seattle, Mexico City, Louisville, Kentucky, wherever, Kansas City. These places have been, everybody's been kind of lining up, waiting for that moment. Give us the signal, NBA. When's the process starting? And instead, what we got was Adam Silver saying, we started in motion some committees to study it. And I think that took some people by surprise. I'm going to say it did not entirely take me by surprise, and in part because of some of the things that I reported on and wrote in the story that you referenced back in, I think, February we ran that story.
This year. Yep.
And we did expansion week at The Ringer. Okay. So it was 4 or 5 days worth of stories about expansion. And my piece was about whether or not expansion is even a good idea. And we'll get into that in this conversation, of course. But I think there are real serious questions about whether or not it's actually wise from a basketball standpoint. The economic aspect, I was going to say, is clear, but even that part is a little cloudier now. But it seemed to me that the NBA, if it was on a course for expansion, it was going to be driven by the economics and not by the basketball. Because there's no great basketball reason to, you can't make a compelling basketball reason to expand. There's more talent than ever. Okay, but if you drill down a little bit, as I did in that story, it thins out pretty quickly when it comes to franchise talent, franchise changing talent, the kind of guys who can carry a franchise, right? So that there's that part, but there's no compelling need to expand except for financial reasons, and it's because you can extract billions and billions of dollars from new ownership groups in their expansion fees. All right, cool, that's fine. Is it a good idea though? So that was what I tried to examine then. What happened a couple weeks ago was Adam Silver said, we need to study talent dilution. I guess my story wasn't good enough for them. Maybe they got to do their own study. I don't know. They've got a lot smarter people there to do this kind of thing. But I imagine they'll do a similar kind of exercise, maybe with a different framework for it. But he was saying, like, we need to study talent dilution. We need to study the economics of it. And the fact is, you know, on the front end, it seems like a no-brainer, right? On an economic standpoint. 2 new teams come in. We have franchises that have been sold recently for between $6 and $10 billion. Charge them somewhere in that range. Yep. Divide that money up among the 30 existing owners. That is a huge windfall for all the existing owners. But the flip side, of course, is 2 more teams. Now you got to split all of the league revenue 32 ways instead of 30. So they got to make the math work. And that math might strike different ownership groups differently. So before we can even get into like, so you mentioned the Bobcats start out in 2005 after the Hornets were allowed to move. Never should have been moved, by the way. The Hornets moved from Charlotte to New Orleans, eventually become the Pelicans. The Bobcats are created to backfill that vacancy. They become the 30th team, and then they eventually are rebranded as the Hornets, and the New Orleans teams, there's all this, whatever. It's crazy. It's confusing. Try explaining it to your kids. And so that team was terrible for years and has remained mostly terrible for most of its existence.
And it's funny you said that because Michael Jordan was arguably one of the greatest ever. He was managing that team. They're terrible, and you have like the greatest player ever managing that team. But anyway,
they're on their third ownership group, third or fourth. So the Grizzlies, when they came in Vancouver, when the Raptors came in Toronto, it takes a long time for these teams to get good. But the point I made in the story in February, and I encourage people to go look it up at theringer.com, is that it's not just that it's really hard to create an expansion team from scratch and then try to accelerate the development and become competitive in a short period of time. It's that in creating 2 new teams, 1 team in 2005, 2 teams the last time when it was Toronto and Vancouver, you're also diluting the pool because you are drafting from other teams' rosters. You are now competing for their free agents. And so it's not just whether or not the new teams, if and when they come into the league, can become competitive. It's what is the domino effect, the ripple effect on all the existing teams and the ability to build out rosters and to have enough depth. We're in an era where depth matters a lot because there aren't enough superstars. So you need 1 superstar plus a lot of depth. There aren't enough superstars, and eventually there may not be enough depth. So anyway, if the question is what can the NBA do to prevent teams from coming in and being like just a disaster for years? 1, I don't think it's necessarily their concern. They just want to extract the money. Now it's up to you. You figure it out.
Yeah.
But 2, it's impossible to know because we don't know what the rules of engagement are going to be. It's been 21 years, as we mentioned, 20 years since the last expansion.
Yeah, so 2021, yep.
Yeah. When the Bobcats came in, when the Grizzlies and Raptors came in, there were restrictions that the league imposed on those teams. They couldn't draft number 1 overall. I think for some of those, they couldn't even draft top 3 for a while. You had a lower salary cap than the rest. And so they put these restrictions on them that frankly weren't really fair. It's hard enough to start a team from scratch, but it's been 2 decades and we have a different commissioner and we have completely different owners. Like pretty much almost 100% of the owners have changed over too. So how this group of owners and this commissioner decide to create the framework for expanding, if they create the framework for expanding, it's way too soon to know what those parameters will be.
I think the draft, how the expansion draft works, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like they protected 8 players in the past, and then you get to draft the player after that. So, out of the 30 teams, arguably there's only after 8 players, the rest out of the 15 players after the 8, the other 7, they're like, they're not the biggest names, and they may 1 or 2 of them might be good, but it's kind of if they change the formatting the rules of the expansion draft, of course that could maybe help teams, but the economics, finance, you pay the expansion fee, and the NBA is probably just like you said it. Hey, do what you want. Up to you. It takes 5-10 years to get good. That's how long it takes to get good. So yeah.
You could play around with this stuff and say like, all right, if they want the teams to be competitive from day 1 or more competitive or have more of a chance, instead of being able to protect 8 players. And by the way, back then, I think we were still dealing with 12 or 13 man rosters. So up until sometime in the 2000s, an NBA roster was 12 guys. 12 guys, and you could have up to 3 injured players. You had an injured list back in the day. And then teams would just like fake injuries so that you could keep a 13th guy or a 14th guy. And then eventually they just kept, expanding through different CBAs. They went from 12 to 13 to now, I think every team has to carry a minimum of 14, but you can go up to 15. Now we have two-way guys too. So you can really have, if you want to, you can have pretty much 18 players under contract, 15 plus 3 two-ways. And so because of that, I would say the protection rules in an expansion draft, maybe you need to, protecting 8 guys now means like 8 out of 15 or 8 out of 18 if it's the two-way guys too. I'm guessing the two-way guys would just be like left out of this. So let's say it's 8 out of 15. Whereas back in the day, if it was 8, it was 8 out of maybe 13. You're protecting like 80%, 90% of whatever your roster. Like it's a really, the percentages are probably wrong. I'm a writer. That's why I don't do math. But it was a very high percentage. Now it would only be about half. Maybe you should make it even less. Maybe you should only be able to protect like 5 guys.
Yep.
So that you have to risk losing a rotation player. The flip side of that, of course, is the argument that I've already made, which is there's not enough talent to go around, period. And I think that, you could create 2 new teams that might be okay, but at what cost to the existing teams? And you might lose a key rotation player. But I would argue that if you want the new teams to have any chance at all, you should be able to. You shouldn't allow them to protect that many players. You should have the risk of losing real players, not 13th men, 12th men, 11th men. Here's a fun exercise for people. I'm not going to pull it up right now. If anybody's curious about this, go look up who the Bobcats got in the expansion draft. Then look at who their opening night roster was, because it's very different. They drafted a bunch of guys who they immediately replaced through free agency and trades because the guys they were able to draft in the expansion draft were crap. Yeah. That's the bottom line. And I think you probably find a similar thing with the Grizzlies and Raptors when they first came in. Drafted a bunch of guys in the expansion draft, but then the real talent that they got was through free agency and trades.
Free agency, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they just have to, depending how, obviously you mentioned they protect teams, like let's say they set up a new expansion draft format where they protect 5, and the rosters are through agency, I think that's where they really make the move to finalize the roster. They don't just go with who they get in the draft. So, they work around it. But you mentioned, cause you were at the press conference, Adam Silver, the media deal. And this is a new media deal coming in. What are your thoughts on this? It's like an 11-year deal, the longest, tenured one in NBA history, I believe, counting a 2-year increase from the previous one. What are your overall thoughts on this from the financial side? What do you think of this new media deal?
It's a great sign for the league just in terms of stability and the obviously the clear show of faith that the networks and streamers have in the NBA's continued success, right? Like they spent a gazillion dollars, 70-something billion
76.
to it's just an astounding number. And we see like Devin Booker signed an extension a few weeks back where he's eventually going to be making 75 million per year.
Crazy.
The salary cap itself was 75 million as recently as probably 10 years ago, I want to say.
And it's even like, I think the news with Jokic is he's waiting out another year because he could potentially be making 80 million if he signs next year. So it's
we're not far off from the first player making 100 million in a year. In a 1-year salary. And once upon a time, 100 million over the course of your career was considered just an absolutely astounding marker. And now we're not that far from a guy doing it in one season. And it's bears noting every time we have these conversations, the NBA and the league, or the league of the players, their collective bargaining agreement guarantees the players up to 51%, and almost always ends up being 51%. So it's effectively a 50-50 split. The players get their half. So when revenues are 10 billion, the players are getting 5 billion in the aggregate. And the 100 million, the 80 million, the 75 million, whatever that Devin Booker's getting, we need to remember it's always a percentage of the cap. It's a percentage of the revenue. It is simply a function of math and of how well the league is doing. So these new media rights deals that the league signed are an incredibly great sign for the league, certainly for the players. And I don't know whether there's much more to say about it beyond that, other than, when you talk about expansion and why others, why billionaires want to drop 5, 6 billion, 10 billion in the case of the Lakers to get in, it's because this is one, these are very rare commodities to be able to own an NBA team, and two, yeah, it's a pretty good business to be in, whether it's to eventually sell a franchise for, hundreds of millions or billions more than you bought it for, or whether it's because you think you can make money year over year.
And I think it's, well, because it's the network, the providers of it's ESPN, ABC, and NBC, this upcoming season for next 11 years. What are your thoughts on, TNT not being part of the mix? Obviously, inside the NBA is going to ESPN, not on TNT where it started out. But what are your thoughts on the providers? Do you have any opinion on the providers or your take on it? What do you think?
Nothing really dramatic. I will just say, I thought it was a damn shame that Warner Brothers Discovery, or whatever the hell their name is now, botched this so badly or didn't value the NBA enough. I think it's a damn shame. We're seeing a lot of folks from NBA TV and NBA.com. Those were properties that Turner ran in cooperation or in partnership with the NBA. A lot of people's futures are up in the air. That part sucks as well. But look, I'm glad Inside the NBA will continue. I think everybody, including a lot of people involved with Inside the NBA, are still kind of curious as to how this works, where they're still going to be at a Studio J, presumably, with the same crew and the same vibe and the same, fun features and everything else. And obviously still, Shaq, Chuck, Ernie, Kenny. But on ESPN, like, how does that really work? How does it sound? Is it truly going to, is it still going to sound the same, feel the same? Like, that's really important, because if it doesn't, it's not going to last. We're going to know. The viewers will know, and the viewers will react in kind. So, don't F it up, ESPN, is my main take there.
And I think everyone has like the opinion, because, ESPN is managed by Disney. There's like, I don't know. Two can make that argument because, Shaq and Barkley, they're kind of like unfiltered on TV anyway. So, and I kind of consider them like as not media vets, but they've been doing it for so long. I don't think they'll be like, hey, don't say this. I feel like Shaq and Barkley particularly would be like, don't tell me what to say.
The second they try to tell them what to say or what not to say, it's going to go badly. It's going to go badly. So we will know. That's the thing I love about Chuck and Shaq. And I covered Shaq for 7 years in LA. Those guys aren't suffering fools lightly, and they're also not going to be told what they can and can't say. And you do so at your own peril. So we'll see. But the other piece of it, on the positive side, look, Amazon and NBC coming in as new partners, obviously NBC returning after a very long time of not having the NBA. NBC and Amazon, they've hired their own crews. There's a lot of, Turner talent that they've picked up, but a lot of guys, Blake Griffin and Dirk Nowitzki and other guys who they have, and Jamal Crawford obviously had a short run with Turner. Bringing in a lot of new voices, I think, is healthy for the presentation of the league. I would like to think that or at least I'm hoping that Amazon and NBC will try new things, like that it won't feel like the same old broadcast that we're used to for the last 20, 30 years. Like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know exactly what that would be, but I just hope there's a little innovation that goes with this. We could certainly use, a little bit of kind of reimagining of how a sports broadcast and a studio show can look and feel and sound. And I hope they take advantage of the fact that you're starting from scratch. Try something new. Give us something else. I also hope that they find the right balance between entertainment and information, right? Like, Inside the NBA is better than anybody else at the entertainment part of it. People can quibble or debate about whether or not it's informative or how informative or if it's informative enough. I'm not going to talk about some of the other studio shows, but I think there is plenty of room for there to be a new version of this on Amazon or NBC, where we get a really nice balance between the fun and the personalities and the bits and the shtick, but also some great basketball talk that informs the public, and that is not just another version of a debate show. We got enough debate shows at this point.
And just circling back to the press conference, because I read something online. I think Adam Silver, he mentioned potentially starting a European league or exploring, the European market. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think the league is seen as a higher priority or more like strategic growth opportunity of them expanding to Europe? Obviously, European stars, one can make a case the best player in the league is European with Jokic, and obviously Giannis, there's been a rise of European stars. So what do you think of the NBA expanding more into Europe?
It's interesting. it feels like this almost came out of nowhere, right? Like within the last year at some point, Adam Silver's talking about wanting to create an NBA Europe of some kind. And it would not be connected to the NBA, right? To be clear, like we're not going to see, the Knicks flying over to Paris to play, regular season game against a Paris team. I think what they see is that there's just room to compete with or maybe knock out, I don't know, the EuroLeague. They see a business opportunity. I don't know that it has that as much to do with the basketball. So where that goes, what it looks like, I think is still kind of hard to get our heads around, but it certainly seems like that's become the priority. When I was doing the story on expansion that we referenced earlier that ran in February, I started working on that a couple months before. So this conversation may have happened in like November or December with somebody, but I was asking about when we think expansion might really get underway and when we might actually see 2 new teams. What's the soonest we'd see new teams? And people were talking about 3 years out, 5 years out. And part of it was, as a couple of people said to me, like, the league seems much more focused on this European thing now. Like, that's really taken precedence. When I threw that at the league, they denied it. They said, "Oh, we can walk and chew gum at the same time." Basically, like, don't think that just because we're pursuing Europe means we can't also do domestic expansion. But the perception around the league from a lot of people was, no, like they can only do so many things at once, and you're first. And based on Adam's comments a couple weeks ago, kind of that seems to be what he's kind of telegraphing too. We could be misreading that, but it certainly seems like Europe is first. I don't know what that looks like. I don't think it has too much of an impact on the NBA itself, though.
I think it comes, obviously, there's the European side as well, but just kind of relating to development as well with the G League as well, with expansion, because obviously teams have a G League component. How do you see that balance coming into play, like with the G League, or what do you take away from that?
The NBA just recently got to the point where I think finally we have 30 G League teams for 30 franchises, and if you expand by 2, you're going to need presumably 2 more expansion teams 2 more G League teams for the expansion teams. Look, the G League's a way station for okay players, for guys who want to get to the league, and the vast majority of them will not. There's a lot of guys who have used the G League as a stepping stone or as a development incubator, as an injury rehab opportunity. There's a lot of different ways the G League is used, but I don't think it's not like minor league baseball where guys spend several years in the minors and then work their way up. The G League, some guys use it as a stepping stone, yes, but it's a tiny percentage. Like the NBA loves to trot out the number of players in the NBA who has spent time in the G League, but they were NBA players already who were sent down to get some reps. They didn't come out of college or come out of high school, go to the G League. Like the G League Ignite failed. It lasted like all 2-3 seasons, and that was the end of that. That was like funny you said that, because I was about to say that G League Ignite, they tried to do that, they started that, and then they had like I think the highest pick that was Jalen Green, who went to the G League Ignite. But with college, with NIL and everything, I guess college is still the route the best high schoolers are going to take. Overtime elite, NIL, other opportunities. I don't know anything about overtime elite's finances or how long they'll last either, but I feel like NIL has really made it hard to do anything else. But yeah, like the G League is not, I don't know that it's that vital a component to this whole expansion conversation, other than there will have to be presumably 2 more teams.
Got you. And also just from, Adam Silver, he's making his comments from the press conference, from the player side. I don't know if you've heard insights, you've covered it. Player empowerment has been a trending topic in NBA, and it's, free agency moves years ago, players asking out, if a player wants to go somewhere, they're going to make their way. They're going to make their way there. I feel like that's very, high in NBA compared to the other American sports. How do you foresee this influence, or do you see any influence of the players impacting expansion, at all? Like, where do you see the relation between the Players Association and, expansion?
I don't want to oversimplify this, but I'm going to. 2 new teams means 30 more full-time jobs, 36 if you want to count the 2 ways. There's absolutely no reason for the Players Association to have any input other than yay, gung ho, let's do it. It's more jobs. It's more jobs. It's more player jobs. Other than that, I do think that the league where things are now, Adam Silver has a great relationship, I think, with the Players Association through the last couple of different leadership teams. Currently, it's Andre Iguodala, of course, himself a former player, who's the executive director of the Players Association, and Fred Van Vliet, your former Raptor, is now the newly elected president of the Players Association. I think if the PA has thoughts on how expansion could unfold or should unfold, I'm sure there'll be constructive conversations, but it's a league decision. Like, I don't think this is, I could be wrong on this. I don't think there's even anything in the CBA about the PA having a role in expansion, because it's the owners who have to decide whether or not to invite in new partners, and the league's role. So like the ownerships, 30 ownership groups and league officials, I think, are the ones who make that decision. I don't think the players will have much input other than, yes, we are very much in favor of more jobs for players.
More jobs for players, exactly. More opportunities. So sometimes they make it, sometimes simplifying is just the best. You know, it's 2 more teams, 30 jobs.
Yeah. I mean, happy. Look, I guess you could say, well, because
I guess from the
pie is split more ways, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So is the because the players not only get 51% of revenue, but it's capped at 51%. So more players pulling from that total pool of money, does it decrease salaries? I mean, I think the league would argue they'd probably give them an economic model that says, here, this is what we're showing in terms of like league growth, and how it will be impacted by new fans and new markets and more merchandise sold and more TV deals and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm guessing it more than pays for itself from a player's standpoint. Yeah. So my guess is the players would have no opposition to it.
And in terms of, because we mentioned CBA a lot, are you a fan of this current CBA, or like, what are your thoughts on this current CBA versus the previous one, if you had to like compare the two? Because obviously with the aprons and stuff, teams, like, it's like a team, look at the Celtics, for instance, they're making moves because of finances. Like, based on this new CBA, what are your thoughts on this current one versus the old one? What do you think of them, those two, both of those?
So I've been covering the league since 1997, so I've seen a lot of different versions of the CBA. This is the closest thing to a hard cap the NBA has ever had, and it has consequentially put teams in a position where they have to make harder choices than they've ever had to before. Because of trying to avoid the second apron and all the penalties that come with it that go far beyond financial. Financial penalties weren't enough to keep keep teams from spending way beyond their competitors, and the NBA prefers they don't do that. They would like a narrower range of the lowest spending to the highest spending teams. I get that. I don't have a strong view on this. It's not my money. It's not my teams. It's not my rosters. I'm not a fan. I don't have any stake in whether or not a team is able to build properly or whether they have to sacrifice players. What I will say is, I think it's better for leagues overall. Let me say it a different way. Forget the leagues. Go team by team. Is it better or worse for Denver Nuggets fans that they see a bunch of critical players to their championship team have to be lost to free agency because the team couldn't afford to keep them, or couldn't find a mechanism to keep them because of cap constraints? Is it better or worse for fans of the Milwaukee Bucks that ever since they won the championship, there's been this slow erosion there? Now, some of this is just choices made by the teams, trades made, draft picks made, draft picks traded, maybe just decisions made to stick with some older players, maybe too long, whatever. There's a lot of different things that go into it. But I think continuity is really important for fans. Fans like, especially if their team has been good, now you really want continuity. Continuity with a crappy team is not so great. But when you have a good team, you want to see the core kept together. I do think that there's maybe a downside to so much turnover forced by the constraints of the system, because you have less continuity. It's harder to sustain success. We have 7 champions in 7 years, something that's never happened in the history of the NBA. At what point are we going to start to say we miss dynasties? And I think, again, that's eye of the beholder type stuff, right? If you're a Warriors fan, you miss having a dynasty. If you're everybody else who, resented the fact that the Warriors, had a great team and then added Kevin Durant, you're perfectly fine that there's no dynasty right now. But dynasties have driven the league because, love them or hate them, they generated interest. And so I don't know, how to judge that yet, because we're still so early in this new CBA. Things will probably even out. The one thing I've been saying to people, and I've talked to a lot of people around the league, and agree with me on this. It takes a few years for the system to kind of normalize, for teams to adjust to the new reality when you've had some extreme changes, as the second apron is. So we got to give it time. Bad deals will come off the books. There was very little cap room to spend this summer, and that's part of why restricted free agents are still locked up, right? They haven't been able to do anything. And so, again, all the hand-wringing that goes on with that. But 2026, 2027, 2028, the deeper we get into this, the more of the bad deals from the old system will have come off the books. If teams are going to be more conservative from here on out, and some of them will, the smart ones will, maybe there are fewer bad deals clogging up the system. Eventually teams get to cap room. It happens. But we're also in a system where everybody's incentivized to sign extensions, and so you don't get to free agency. So that's part of it too. We just need a few years for it to reach a new equilibrium before we know whether this system is really as onerous as it seems to some people right now.
Yeah, because when was it signed? The CBA, was it the new one 2 years ago, or I know it's
2-3 years ago. Yeah, because something like that, somewhere in the last 2 to 3 years
ago. So I guess you got to wait for it to digest. But everyone, OKC, like they committed, I think $750 million to their three guys. I think Jalen, Shad, and Shea. So everyone's like, oh, in 3-4 years, they're gonna have to make a move. But I feel like OKC, Sam Presti, I feel like he's known about this new CBA for probably like the past 20 years with all the draft picks they have. So
they know what they're doing.
Maybe set up for, we'll have to make a sacrifice, but we have 30, 35 draft pick, 30, 35 first round picks.
They'll be fine.
They'll be fine probably. But just to close, Howard, again, I appreciate this call, appreciate the insights you shared. Obviously we mentioned the media deal, the CBA, which we just touched on. Do you feel like there's another story, just another angle of expansion which people aren't discussing, which is, very important when discussing this or considering this, considering all this?
I don't know if there's anything that's been unexplored. I just think that too many people, including media and fans, have not thought enough about the potential for talent dilution. We have this thing, and again, I wrote about this in the story in February. We have this thing where we say, oh, we've got more talent than ever. And it's true. Like, it absolutely is fundamentally true that there's more talent than ever, in part because of the growth of the game across the globe. But as we studied in the story that I did in February, most of the increase in talent, and when we say that the league is deeper than ever, it's B and C level players. It's not the A level or certainly the A++ level players, right? We don't have more Giannis's or more Jokic's or more Shea's or more Lukas. We have a lot more, Norm Powell's, right? Like we got a lot of guys who are really good, but a bunch of guys who are really good together without a franchise star are a sub 500 team.
Yeah.
A team of nothing but, I don't mean to pick on Norm Powell, but a team of a bunch of Norm Powells is a 500 or less team. I mean, look at the Sacramento Kings right now, right?
And I think they have a good team, but they're not even, I don't even remember if did they make the play in this year? I can't even remember.
The Kings?
Yeah, the Kings.
Yeah, probably not. But look, Domantas Sabonis is a good player.
Yeah.
Very good player. Been an all-star a couple of times, been all NBA at least once, I think. DeMar DeRozan, good player, older, but good player. Zach LaVine, really good player. Keegan Murray, good player. They've got a bunch of good players. They're not going to make the playoffs. And you could say, well, that just speaks to the depth of the league. Yeah, kind of, but also it speaks to the fact that like we have a lot of just good or to really good players and not great. And so when the problem in the NBA is supreme talent, it's not a problem, it's just the reality. Supreme talent drives success. The best talent. Giannis, Luka, Jokic, Kobe, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, whatever. Like you need the best of the best. And if you don't have one of those guys, good luck. Good luck even making the playoffs. And with 30 teams in a system like this, where talent's really dispersed because of cost, right? You can only afford so many max players. You can, it used to be you could stack up 2, 3, maybe even a fourth max player. Now, 2 at the most. 3, Phoenix like was a fake super team, right? But Beal was paid like a superstar. So they had 3 guys on max deals. They were completely locked up. It was a disaster. We see what's happened since.
And even I think even to add to Beal, his no trade clause just made everything completely.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other factors there. We don't need to get into the weeds about the Suns. They've been very foolish. But the point is this: even in the system that we have now, it's hard to stack up stars, right? So now you do have them dispersed. You do have more like 1 star per team at most. And we still don't have enough stars to go around for everybody to feel like they have a chance. And if you had 2 more teams, that's 2 more teams that don't have a franchise star to build around. And if they get one, it's because they stole it from another team. They poached somebody. They traded for somebody. They signed somebody as a free agent. Whatever it may be, I think the most unexplored in the public sphere, the most unexplored, least discussed part of expansion is whether there really, truly is enough high-end talent to justify it. Yeah. And to not have the league get watered down and have more Charlotte Hornets type teams running around just flailing, completely unable to put together a coherent plan for any length of time. And when you have 2 more teams, that's 2 more teams draining talent from the existing 30. We're just going to have more mediocre teams or more really bad teams. I don't see how it adds from a basketball standpoint to the quality of the league. I think it only detracts.
It's like I said, it's a trade-off. Obviously you mentioned, I preface this whole this conversation based off, the competitive standpoint, but then, we trade off between, there's just going to be 32 mediocre teams, an example of 2, but the finances, the NBA, it's a business opportunity, so it's just, where do they prioritize, both of those things? How do they balance it? I guess it's up to the league's hands, on what they do. So yeah. But again, Howard, appreciate sharing your insights with me, with the audience. Read your article. I've been following The Ringer for a while, so super excited to have the opportunity to speak with you. So yeah, is there anything you want to share, like socials you want to share with everybody, where they could find you? All those things. Yeah. We're in kind of
a quiet period here because, but I am doing Zach Lowe's pod this week. Okay. Our season finale for the Real Ones podcast on The Ringer, we taped last week. That's up right now if you want to go download that with me, Logan, and Raja Bell. People can find all of my written work and the podcasts, of course, on theringer.com and on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on social media on Blue Sky at Howard Beck, and you can find me on Instagram at Howard A. Beck. You cannot find me on the other platform. I'm still on the other platform. I'm just not tweeting at all. So if you want to find me and have any feedback, find me on Blue Sky.
Now this is a good one. This is my first episode doing this, so I got a big one in. I got you to be my first guest, so I'm excited.
I'm happy to do it. Honored to do it. Appreciate you having me. Great questions. So thanks a lot, Noah. Appreciate it.
Thanks. That concludes our first episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Our next episode will be posted next week, Monday. So if you haven't, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to be notified. But until next time, I'll see you all next week.